Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. We are glad to have you with us for today's History is Lunch. My name is Drew Gardner with the two Mississippi Museums, and we are glad to be in our home, the Craig H. Neilsen Auditorium, and the Museum of Mississippi History and the Mississippi Civil Rights Museum. We're also streaming live on both Facebook and YouTube, where you can watch any of our previous History is Lunch programs at any time. And then also, if you want to share today's program with anybody that wasn't able to be with us in person, they can log in online and stream it live right now, or you can send them that link on Facebook or YouTube afterwards, so they can check out this incredible program that we have lined up for us today. We hope that you'll consider joining us this Sunday right back here in the auditorium for a feature screening of In Search of Phyllis Wheatley Peters at 2 p.m. Again, this Sunday, March 1st. This 35-minute documentary uncovers the little-known love story of Phyllis Wheatley Peters, America's first Black published poet, and John Peters, a free Black man she married in 1778. It is also an instrument to demonstrate how Phyllis Wheatley Peters was an architect of American freedom and challenging a society that still accepted enslavement in the midst of the American Revolution. Following that screening, we're going to have an incredible panel conversation featuring moderator Ebony Lumumba, scholars Kelly Ellis and Robbie Luckett, and the filmmaker Leslie Askew, who are going to highlight not only the film, but also Margaret Walker's creation of the Phyllis Wheatley Poetry Festival at Jackson State University and the Black Studies program at Jackson State University as well. But today, we're incredibly thankful for today's History is Lunch to continue our America 250 journey as we explore how Mississippi stories have shaped our nation. We're glad to welcome the folks from the Hill Country Project. Located in Benton County, Mississippi, the Hill Country Project has documented the stories of residents of Benton County who lived through the Mississippi Civil Rights Movement and beyond, with the goal of providing educational support to the local school districts there in Benton County. This afternoon, you're going to hear from board members of the Hill Country Project, Roy DeBerry, Aviva Futorian, Sharon Gates Albert, and John Lyons, in addition to several Benton County residents featured in this work, Marsha Richard Gillespie, Sarah Richard, and James Bubba Griffin. So without further ado, I want to invite John Lyons to the stage as he kicks off our welcome and introduction to this program. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Drew, and thank you to the Mississippi Civil Rights Museum and the Department of Archives and History for hosting us today. It's an honor to be here, and coming from Chicago, a delight to be here on a sunny 70-degree day in late February. My name is John Lyons. I'm a board member of the Hill Country Project. Drew outlined our mission, so I won't go over that with you. But today you're going to hear from some of the people that we've been working with over these last 25, 30 years. At this time, I'd like to invite our panel to come up. As they come up, I'll introduce them, and then we'll play a brief video clip. If you can join us on stage. As they're coming up, we have Aviva Futorian, who's a former SNCC volunteer, was down in Benton County in 1964, and currently is the chair of the Hill Country Project. She's joined by her Freedom School student, Dr. Roy DeBerry, who is our executive director. In addition, we have 3 participants who we interviewed in our oral history work. Marcia Richard Gillespie, her sister Sarah Richard, and James Bubba Griffin, all of whom you'll hear from shortly. So before we hear from our speakers, we would like to play a clip of several interviews that we put together for an event way back in 2012. We feel it's a good introduction to the work that we do, the people that we work with, and the project that we've been working on.
Back in the they were buying people, raised buying people. So my grandfather was a slave. I'm on my way, freedom land.
My grandfather was Edmund Moore. He was a slave, and he came from Sussex County, Virginia. And he walked here, I believe he said. Took him 6 months to get here.
I don't know nothing much about it, because my mama didn't talk much about it. But I was here. Yeah, some of my grandparents speak about how they was sold, and when this man come by to buy the Negroes, and if they had a horse, a mule, or something in the barn or something, they would destroy it. They would kill them, set the barn on fire. They would destroy all of that, they told me.
When I was with Daddy, he didn't own any land. He was a sharecropper with the hammer. The man furnished the mule. He fed us, bought us clothes, and he got half of what the crop made. He got his part, you might say clear, but we paid for our part out of what we made. Sometimes we cleared something, and sometimes we didn't.
We day worked.
What does that mean?
Work by the day, 50 cents a day.
Tell us about it. How does that work?
Pull it. Yeah, we work day work 50 cents a day. I'm telling you, we had to get up early, go to work, and stay late. The men had to get up around 5 o'clock and be at the barn at 5 o'clock.
It was rough. Get up early in the morning. After you milk the cows, you got ready and you went to the field. And you work.
You talk about a Negro almost have worked.
I bet.
I have went from plowing. I have plowed. I could teach a mule and a plow, and plow just like a man. I have picked cotton. I've chopped cotton. I could pick over 300 pounds of cotton when cotton was thick.
Chopping cotton, honey. Absolutely, that's what. 12 o'clock, come in and hurry up and eat dinner, and if it was any to eat, and then go on home.
I'm on my way. I won't turn back.
Oh, honey, it wasn't easy, but just somehow or another we made it. Just made it through.
Somebody would write it up and we'd run the printing machine. and print the freedom train up. And I'd take so many, and distribute them out to different people, whoever was interested. I'd offer it to them whether they wanted it or not.
And the point was to get a representative number of blacks to vote.
The voting, so I can be a citizen, so I can be considered somebody.
I just thought, if regardless of race or color, a person does the right thing, say the right thing, do the right thing, I don't see why he can't be treated right.
But I can recall that I knew that we was integrating the school, and I knew that there would be problem probably. I just know that by him being white, he could do what he wanted, and I could do what you say.
When I first went to Ashland, I really didn't have no really visions of what to expect. I thought it would be just like it was going to the all black school that I was going to. I didn't know it was going to be, this hatred stuff that was going on.
I used to cry a lot because like I say, they were just so mean, and you couldn't understand back then why. And we was little children. I was a little girl, and I didn't understand why people was being so mean.
They would call you a nigger, but it did hurt my feelings. I went on.
Well, when all is said and done, was it worth it?
Yes, it was. It was worth it. But like the fellow said, sometimes I said, Lord, why me? But it got to be somebody.
I would like for my kids to know that fact about my family, about the KKK within my family, my great-grandfather being a preacher. I want them to know all of it. I want them to know their heritage, but I want them to learn from that heritage, the mistake that their ancestors made. I want them to learn that mistake that they made. I don't want them to go along and repeat history in a bad way. I don't want that.
By and by, Lord, by and by, there's a better home awaiting, Lord, in the sky, Lord, in. Oh,
I hope you enjoyed that short film, which introduced you to some 14 of the 100 or so people from Benton County that we interviewed for our history project, which became the book. Before I introduce myself, however, I want to point out that this composite film was put together by John Lyons over there, and the two women in the middle are the daughters, and two of the people out there were the children of Spence Richard, who you heard or you saw speaking up there. Unfortunately, he is no longer with us, but at least the children are. So, my name is Aviva Futorian. I spent about 2 years in Mississippi from 1964 to about 1966. I came there as a so-called freedom school teacher, and at the end of the summer was invited by the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, or SNCC, to organize people in Benton County, which I then did until 1966. Sorry, my notes here are a little screwed up. As you see, that's Benton County. Benton County is on the border of Tennessee, in the center of the state. In 1890, it had a population of about 11,500. Today, it has a population of 8,000 with a negative growth rate, 61% white, 36% black. The average income today is $32,000. 31% of the blacks and 16% of the whites lived below the poverty line. In 1965, it was the second poorest county in the state. But poor as it was, it had one of the most active civil rights movement in the state. One reason was because most of the black population were either landowners or renters, and that they were by no means wealthy, far from it, but they didn't have the kind of pressure from whites that many others in other counties had. They were independent of white pressure, in other words. Another reason was that they were so active was because of Henry Reeves. That's him up there conducting a civil rights meeting. He was of a local farmer who had been active in the civil rights movement since the 30s. One of the things that was amazing about him was that he visited every single black resident in Benton County when they turned 21, which was then the voting age, in order to urge them to register to vote and become citizens. He would really lecture them. Almost everyone we interviewed in the 90s told about Mr. Reeve visiting them and urging them to register. Now, those of you who saw the movie Selma may remember how Oprah Winfrey, who played the part of a woman who tried to register but failed because she couldn't name the 67 circuit clerks of Alabama, when she failed, she was clearly embarrassed and humiliated. I mean, you could see the humiliation all over her face. Well, that's how black people all over Mississippi felt. Not only did they fail, but their names were published in the local white newspaper for 2 weeks. One thing that the movement did was to make people realize that failing registration was not something to feel humiliated about, but was in fact a badge of honor. This is Bernie Alexander. She was a local farmer and a poet. Her poetry, which was, of course, very political, was printed in the local black newspaper, the Benton County Freedom Train. She held the local record of trying to register 13 times and failing. So her name was in the white paper constantly, and in the black, her poetry was in the black paper all the time. In fact, because Benton County had such a high registration and failure rate, after the Voting Rights Act was passed, it became one of the first counties in Mississippi to get a federal registrar. So Mrs. Alexander finally registered successfully, and along with 200 others, voted the local judge out of office. That's me riding the city of New Orleans back and forth to Chicago to visit my parents and assure them I'm still alive. And that's Roy, one of the first people I got to know in Mississippi. He was one of my Freedom School students. He knew all the answers to the questions I raised. More than that, he was an awfully nice kid. I say kid because he was barely 16 at the time. Thus began a 60-plus year friendship between two people who had the most disparate backgrounds, races, family incomes, educations, and neighborhood. And yet, whenever we'd see each other over the next 60 years, we had so much to talk about that we simply couldn't end our visits. Roy was not from Benton County, but from Holly Springs, which was the adjoining county where SNCC had its main project covering 6 counties. When I started working in Benton County, he often worked with me, and he joined the college prep class I taught there that fall and winter. He drove out with me from Holly Springs. What I didn't know was that on the way to our class, he would stop off at Mr. Reeves' house. I thought to drop something off, but it was actually to pick up a shotgun in case we encountered trouble along the way. Thank God we did not. After my stay in Mississippi, I went on to law school, Roy went on to college and grad school and then back to Mississippi. In 1994, after 30 years, we attended a SNCC reunion in Jackson, and that's on the left, Cleve Sellers and Hardy Fry, and then me at the reunion. We attended, everyone bemoaned the fact that the children and grandchildren of local civil rights activists had no idea what their parents and grandparents had lived through and fought for. By this time, Mississippi had changed enormously, and it seemed that the activists were too angry and embarrassed to talk about what they had had to live through, even though they had fought successfully to end it. So Roy and I decided to start interviewing the activists to record their deeds for history. These were among the first interviewees. On the left is Eldora Johnson. She was 93 at the time. You might remember her from the video. She's the person in the video you saw who said, quote, "You talking about a Negro woman that's worked, I could hitch up a mule and plow just like a man," and so on. She was not active in the movement at all. When I asked her in the interview why, she said she was afraid white people would kill her and her husband. She felt she knew them better than we did because she had worked for them. The middle woman is Mrs. Reeves, who taught at the black school and was fired because of her husband. And on the right is Walter Reeves, Henry Reeves' nephew, who was a plumber. He tells in the book about the big lawyer in town trying to coerce him to work against school desegregation. His answer was astonishing, and I wish I had time to tell you what it was, but you can read it in the book. These first interviews were done fairly crudely because none of us knew how to use a video machine. In 2003, another reunion of North Mississippi civil rights people was held, and each one of the 6 county churches that the SNCC project in Holly Springs was in charge of, were to host the attendees. That's when I had the idea to get John Lyons over there involved. I think he was about 21 at the time. He had already made a video about the Illinois death penalty, which was how I knew him. I gave him the 10 crudely filmed interviews and asked him to make a real film out of them. I also asked him to come down to Mississippi for the reunion to show the film. I did that knowing he would become totally enamored with the local people and would want to continue interviewing with us. He did fall totally in love with the community, so that the next 90 of our interviews were professionally filmed. The film, by the way, called My Mind Stayed on Freedom, was such a hit that it gave a great reputation even among the people we had never known in the 60s. So we had no trouble interviewing anybody because we had such a good reputation 30 years later. By the way, you can see the film on our website, which John will give you the site for later. This is one of the interviews we did with John doing the filming. The Crawfords. I particularly remember his telling us about his father taking him up in the 30s in their horse and wagon to see the remains of 2 men who had been lynched, Smith Huey and Robert Jones. He said he thought his father did that to scare him and keep him from speaking up to white people. But he said it had the opposite effect. It just made him mad. So he became active in the freedom movement. Well, I'll try to remember the rest. Okay. By 2007, we had enough information and had done enough activity that we decided to form a project, the Hill Country Project, when we added another member, Steve Klein, who was also from Chicago and was an economist. So he had financial information, which we sorely lacked. And in the middle is Spence Richard, who again is the father of these two middle women and was in the video that you saw. And then we opened an office. Yeah. And the woman you see on the right was Amber Williams, crying because she had just learned from reading the interviews, some of the interviews, how active her own family and her own grandparents had been. So I think I'll stop here. There's another wonderful story about the Neilsen family, who were the only, well, they weren't active in the movement, but they participated in a school boycott and were kicked off the land. And we did find them and interviewed them, but you can read about them in the book. So I think we'll go on to Roy now.
Thanks, Aviva. Thanks very much. Good afternoon. It is always a pleasure to be with my good friends, Michael, Drew, colleagues, members of my board, Aviva that you just heard from, John, Sharon, and of course, our interviewees here on the stage, James, Sarah, and Marcia. Thank you so much for being with us this afternoon. Freedom, that's the theme. The book Voices is one important piece of the efforts we have made in Benton County for more than 50 years. I must say, and I hope I'm speaking for the other editors, while the work has been hard, the effort has been a labor of love. We are forever indebted to the local people who embraced us for so many years and shared their lives with us. One of many concepts which come to mind is changing minds and expanding minds, and changing hearts in the process. And as Spence Richard would say, we call him the resident philosopher, would likely be a probing question: can freedom and fear coexist? His answer, based on the movement in Benton County and the greater civil rights movement, would be a resounding yes. We have documented evidence to support that question. Ms. Eldora Johnson gave an answer to one part of that question. I was just scared they would kill me. As you read this book and understand these compelling stories, you will appreciate the power of the freedom songs and the pivotal role that singing had during the civil rights movement, including Benton County. This would include a number of the people with us on this stage speaking about and loving and singing those songs, and being with their parents and grandparents at the Citizen Club meetings. Crystal Stewart, referenced earlier, says when asked about her segregating school at such a young age, says, I didn't want to be there. I don't know why they treated me so mean. I was just a young girl. The focus of the project was on the critical role the local people played in the modern civil rights movement, and not the iconic or well-known freedom fighters. Those stories are well-known and have been told in multiple ways. We were so fortunate to get these primary sources, people who talk firsthand about lynching and share actual stories from their grandparents and parents who had been enslaved people in America. There are many notable quotes in the volume, and I will just mention just a few. Ms. Sarah Robinson, you don't have to do much to get killed, which remind me of the contemporary murder of Black people, mainly males, but recently Black females, and most recently white male and female. On another quote from Ms. Robinson, referring to European American, you have to make them do right. They won't do right on their own. Quoting from Henry Reeves, to whom the book is dedicated. Or the Dorsey's family. Our parents wanted us to get an education so we could make a living with a pencil instead of working on the farm as sharecroppers. We have achieved that wish. We now make our living with a pencil. Or Miss Sarah Robinson, again, and others stating that Jake Nunley and Lord Thompson being bout the two bravest black men in Benton County, referring to an event where night riders, the KKK, were harassing the black community and attempted to burn down the Freedom House. We are told that Jake and Law teamed with the FBI to chase them away. We're talking about 1964. Although not a direct quote, it is clear to me that the power structure in the county was more opposed to the segregation, race mixing, than voting. And that says a lot because many white folk were definitely opposed to voting, given that many blacks saw the right as a right ticket to freedom for them. Miss Sarah Robinson saying she didn't feel like she could be a citizen unless she could vote. Or Jane Bubba Griffin, former Benton County supervisor and businessman with us today, that I should be judged by my knowledge and not the color of my skin. When will that happen? He answers, when Jesus comes back. What are some key elements that flow through these stories? Leadership, demonstrated powerfully by Henry Reeves as head of the Citizen Club, Charlie Reeves, his brother, Rebecca Doris, who took the liberty to hold up a lantern to show some wayward troops the way to Oxford and University of Mississippi during the riot in 1962. Ellie Stewart, Charlie Reeves' daughter, was the active secretary for the Citizen Club and whose picture is on the cover of our book. Nonviolence in most cases. One example of the exception to this strategy was Peggy Simpson saying about her daddy, Reverend John Henry Beard, who went out of the house to shoot in the air at some Klansmen who were threatening his family. I really wanted him to shoot them, not shooting at them. So everybody was not violent. Sharecropping, debt, another form of slavery. People such as Miss Sarah Robinson speaking about chopping cotton and making 50 cents a day. 50 cents a day. That is why Henry Reeves and others knew the importance of owning land, which gave them, unlike sharecroppers, a sense of independence from retaliation, especially financial retaliation, like being made homeless, like the Neilsens. Collective action. While the county grew many leaders, like the ones mentioned earlier, it was really the collective action of so many people, so many local, brave people, young and old, male and female, black and white, who made the change happen. While apartheid, Jim Crow, was a cruel and brutal system, there were some acts of kindness shown by a few whites. Teacher like Teacher Reddick expected that her black as well as white students were to excel and treated them with both dignity and respect. Walter Reeves, the nephew of Henry Reeves, tells a story of his white boss refusing to accept a plumbing job from a client unless he was allowed to not come to the job. And the boss said, no, if he comes to the job, if he can't come to the job, I don't come to the job. He's not going fishing today. Or a white woman who insisted in the Jim Crow era that Miss Nunley, a black woman, should be allowed to go before her because she was first to see the doctor. She was first there to see the doctor, and she had the compassion to allow this woman to go before her in the Jim Crow era. While voices from the Mississippi Hill Country Project clearly focus on the local people, there's a powerful universal message. These important people, speaking about the life and event that happened over a century, have so much changed our current situation, but it's also interesting, but also contradictory, because in many ways, have we really learned the lessons from our past, given some of the things that we are witnessing in our contemporary democratic republic called America?
Thank you so much, Aviva and Roy. Hopefully, and probably you can see what enamored me so many years ago with this place and these people. Next, I would like to introduce you to Marcia Richard Gillespie. If you look carefully at the cover of our book, which is over there, you'll see a very young Marcia on the front row of a massive civil rights meeting. Marcia, who along with her sister Sarah, is the daughter of Spence Richard, who we've mentioned a few times and who you've heard from in the video. She desegregated Benton County's all-white school in the 10th grade in 1965, and we'll spend a few minutes talking about those experiences. Marcia.
Hello, everyone. I was 10th grade wanting to get a better education, which is the reason that we were encouraged to go to the white school. When I got there, I was never looking for trouble. I was always a peaceful, quiet person. But I remember several things that happened my 10th grade year as I got there. We were in our English class one day, and there was one of our black students and one of our white students who just happened to have worn the same identical blazer, if any of you know what a blazer is, to class that day. And my name being Richard, I was always, they seated you in alphabetical order, and I was put at the back. So I had a firsthand view of the white student and the black student. And it was funny to me. They looked at each other. The white student would pull her coat off. The black student would pull her coat off. The white student put hers on. The black student, and they did that several times in our English class. I don't remember the teacher saying anything about it, but that stuck into my mind as to how they did not want us to be anything like them. And one last story, several of us blacks, we would go to lunch at the same time. And there was a white student there who, for some reason or another, thought that we smelled. And on our way from the cafeteria toward the end of the lunch, he made the mistake of walking out the end of the building just as 5 or 6 of us black students made it there. And as he would do when he met us in the hall, he did this. We were nonviolent. We didn't want to touch him, but we made it impossible because we made a circle around him, shoulders just close enough so that he could not pass through us without touching one of us. And we stood there. We didn't say a word. He didn't say a word. We just stood there and looked at him. And with him being white, he turned beet red. And when he turned beet red, he couldn't hold it any longer. He's got a breath. Somebody in our group said, see, we don't smell. We walked off and left him. He didn't turn us into the school principal. We never heard anything else about that day. So those are some of the things that we as blacks going into the all-white school experienced. But we were determined to stay, and I graduated there in 1969. And some of those same students who we graduated with, by the time we had become seniors, we weren't bosom buddies, but we were on speaking terms with each other. And when we all graduated, we all signed our autographs in each other's books. And now, believe it or not, some 40-something years later, we actually have our reunions together. So the blacks and white who at that time did not like us, we're invited and we participate in organizing some of the class reunions.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Marcia. Next, I'd like to introduce Sarah Richard, Marcia's sister, who will tell us a little bit more about one of our very favorite interviewees, her father, Spence.
Good evening. My father was, well, Dad. He never met a stranger, could talk to a fence post if he would talk back to him. And he always had little lessons that he taught us. And I am the 5th of 9 children. So I had a big family. And of the 9 of us, 8 of us had college degrees. And one of my brothers that's a year older than I am, he has cerebral palsy, but he also went to college at Northwest into art. He didn't get a degree, but he did go to college. So out of 9 children, all 9 went to college. And so, but my dad, he said he went to 8th grade and didn't know it, which means that they had 6th, 7th, and 8th grade in the same class. And so he went to 8th grade, but he never finished 8th grade. And my mom, I think, went to maybe 5th grade. But they never told us, you're going to college, you're going to get a degree, you know. But we knew by them working and teaching us at home that we were going to do something. We weren't staying at home. You weren't going to the factory. You weren't getting a job. You were going somewhere and doing something with your life. And he told us one time, well, he told us some of the younger children, grandchildren, he said, always prepare yourself so that jobs will hunt you and you won't have to hunt jobs. And when my niece came back and did the speech at college, at her high school graduation, she told him that. That's what her granddaddy told her. And so over the years, she's prepared herself so that she'll be working one job and she'll get a call. You know, we need you to do this. And I have brothers and sisters who are in the audience out there who did the same thing. Prepare yourself so that, you know, somebody come looking for you. You don't have to look for a job. You have a lot of people now say, I can't find a job. I can't. How are you preparing for that job? We need to train our young children. And I mean, train them that, you know, you got to go out and get yourself together. You know, nobody's going to build you up. You got to build yourself up. And so my dad and my mom, you know, they had a good work ethic. Mama got up every morning. We never went to school without breakfast. Never went to school without breakfast. We played on the ball team, me and my sisters and I. And every time we had a ball game, we had fried chicken. I don't like fried chicken today. But mom would come home from work and we had fried chicken. We didn't go to a ball game without eating. So that let us know that they were preparing us to get us ready for playing ball or going to school or, you know, whatever the situation was. So that was my dad. And he always had these little sayings that he would come up with, and he had a lot of them. Let me see, which one did I tell y'all? About the preparing yourself for school. And he told us one time, he said he was at church, he said he's a verb buster right down the middle. He said, if I say I am going to shoot you, if I say I is going to shoot you, there's going to be some shooting going on. So he said no matter which way he said it, he was going to do it. And he was the kind that you call him and say, I got a problem, I need some help. He said, okay, where you at? You know, and it wasn't no such thing. Now they said, well, how much you going to pay me, or how much you going to charge me? He went and he did. And a lot of people know him. I see people now, I remember your daddy. And I'll be like, yeah, but do you remember him good or bad? But most of the time it's good. So, but that was my dad that y'all saw on the thing. And he was a sharecropper, and then he worked at the different schools. He was a maintenance man. He drove a school bus. He did plumbing. One more story and I'm through. He was working under this man's house, and he had a guy with him that was helping him. And they went under there, and the guy went out with the flashlight and came back in. He said, Mr. Harry, he says, a snake over there. He was under the house. And he told him, Tony, come on. Mr. Harry, there's a snake over there. Tony went on over there, and he told Tony, he said, if the snake don't bother you, don't you bother it. He went on and did his work, and they came out from under there. And Tony said, you remember that now? He said, he do a lot of stuff. And he said, if it don't bother me, I don't bother it. And that was my dad. If you didn't bother him, he didn't bother you. Amen. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sarah. The very first thing your dad told me when I met him, I asked, how are you feeling? He said, I'm getting older. I have one foot in the grave and another foot on a banana peel, which always stuck with me. Thank you again, Sarah. Last on our panel, and also joining us today, is James Bubba Griffin, another resident who we interviewed in the book. He was the first Black supervisor elected in Benton County's 2nd District and is also a local businessman, an entrepreneur. Mr. Griffin's going to talk a little bit about why he agreed to be interviewed, why these stories, his story, were important for us to be captured.
Good afternoon. It's an honor to be here today, and I'm thank God for the Countryside project having here. I'm thank God for them, the mission they on. They're on a mission, and we didn't know about the mission. We just didn't happen. Benton County, you see, I love Benton County, small county, rural county, but there's a number of Blacks that own property, independent. I was elected just court judge, and it's gonna seem like a long time ago. It wasn't. Back in the 1980s, by 82, I was the first Black just court judge to be elected. And the reason why I was elected just court judge, I ran against an incumbent, had been there 3 years. And I had a little small store behind my mama's house that we sold drinks and stuff out of it so I can pay my tuition to school. I'm a graduate from Ole Miss. But, you know, and somebody broke in the store, and I knew who broke in the store. So I went to the just court judge, and I want to take out an affidavit. And he refused because election coming up pretty soon. And I went to one of my professors in school. I said, what should I do? He said, run against him. He said, that's the only way. And the foundation had been set by all the people you see. They had set the foundation for me to get a bond. So when the foundation already built, you come on the foundation. I was the first one that ever ran. And I went to every house in my district, house by house, because they want to, if they see my poster and a Black picture on the poster, they tear it down. So I had to get all of my constituents involved. So I went from door to door, and I've had some white tell me, I just don't vote Black folks. I wouldn't vote for a Black man. That's fine. I do one thing for me because I'm very spiritual. I said, will you do me a favor? He said, what's that? Will you pray for me? He shocked him. I went to the next house right next door, and he told me the same thing. Well, you won't get no votes over here. We all white. I said, fine, but you pray for me. And on election night, I beat the incumbent because he took it for granted. He said no Black never won in Benton County on election. So what I did, I went to every house. If I couldn't get the older person, I got the kids. They're old enough to vote. I made sure I left that house with somebody that's going to support me. And I was going through a transition stage where the young Black began to vote. And that made a transition. They overlooked it because I went to them. And we got a lot of more of my classmates graduated in 1976. We had committees. We rounded out all our classmates, their housing and family, and we pulled it off. And that day forward, the same whites that didn't vote for me, I went back to them again because they had something that going on in their family. They wanted to see the judge. And I treated them so nicely that when I ran for something else, they voted for me. It's all how you treat people, how you treat them. And I say this, and I still say it. I tell the project here, the story got to be told. And when I ran for supervisor, wasn't no problem. I stayed in political arena until I retired. 37 years in political arena, and I made sure that I stayed in contact with all of my constituents. Every person you see on that board here, I had a contact with them. Every one of them, we had contact meeting with them. So yes. Story got to be told. If you don't know your story, you're doomed to repeat it. You have to know your history. This is Black history for Black people. Not because we are behind, but we need to know our history and where we're going. Yes, I'm a business person. I didn't know what poor war was now coming up because we didn't have anything. My mom raised 9 kids, 2 of them were hers, 9 kids. And she refused. If you didn't graduate from high school, you might have had to go to college, but we going to high school. We moved from house to shack. But the fair fact is she wouldn't keep her kids out to go to cotton field. She refused to let her kids stay out of school and go to a field. So we had to move, continuation move, until she bought our own place. Can you succeed? Yes. I went to Ole Miss on a scholarship. I had a work study program. They wouldn't let me go to where we had a work study in landscaping. So my instructor said, no, you go get your books. I'll take care of your time sheet. People will help you when you help yourself. Just because you're Black, that don't mean you stay down. Benton County had more landowners in Benton County that enter the county around us. The richest, for example, landowners, property, assets, you can do it. From a small county that's still decreasing, yes, we might be losing population, but guess what? We put them together in unity. And the blacks, years ago, blacks made a motto that they outvoted, and I'm still in the voting thing right now, that you can do whatever you want to do, but you got to put your mind to it. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Bubba.
Oh yes, so let me say this in before I get here. Let me say this in. My name, James Griffin, but I use Bubba because it's the only way I can make a contact with my community. We have nicknames. That's my nickname, not my real name. So everything you see from point 82 on up to now got my nickname included in there because that's the only people who know me, and I don't mind it. If I can connect with you, nickname doesn't matter. Okay? So I love my nickname because it makes connections with other people. Thank you.
Thank you, Bubba. Thank you. And last up, before we get to some Q&A, I'd like to invite my fellow board member up, Dr. Sharon Gates Albert. Dr. Albert is a former principal of the local elementary school, and she's going to talk a little bit about how our work has impacted the local school system, as well as how the proceeds of the book sales have influenced some young people in Benton County. Dr. Albert.
And Sharon did an amazing job. Some of you may have noticed when one of us left our phones to ring out there in getting them silenced. So.
It was difficult finding it. Good afternoon. I came on the board in 2019 after retiring as a school administrator in Benton County. They have certainly impacted me and has created a legacy in that area. But the book is used many times in the high school in the English department to help do comparative essays, descriptive essays, narrative essays. And Miss Richard and her sister, Miss Gillespie, they participated last year and where they were interviewed by some of the students. So the book is being used as an extension and also as an informative method for children and people growing up in Benton County. The proceeds of this book is used to fund scholarships for students that are graduating from Benton County schools. They are required to write an essay that's related to the book. And that essay is then graded and they are awarded from those. So the proceeds from the book goes to support scholarships and funding students that live in Benton County and their educational success.
Thank you, Sharon. Here's a photo of some of our recent scholarship winners. And that's all we've got. We have some time for Q&A. I think Drew is in the back with a microphone if anybody's got a question.
Thank you. Thank you for your presentation. I'm thoroughly impressed, especially Benton County being a rural county. But my question was about the timeline. You saying that you integrated in 1965, and in my mind, the course really didn't make and put pressure on most of these cities and towns to integrate to somewhere around close to 1970. Straighten me out on the timeline. What made you integrate that early? Was it the courts or I just have my timeline wrong?
Can I just say something about that? We had a lawsuit in our county, and it started earlier than that. And by 1965, they had a settlement, and that's when the students had to start.
But you're right about the time frame.
Yeah.
Most of it was late.
I'd like to respond to that too, because I was in Jackson and they were already starting to come around to certain students' houses to try to get us to go to white schools. And that was 1967, 66, 67. And I changed schools in 67.
Hi, excuse my seat. I would love to know, as a person who came out of Jackson Public Schools in the 80s, what is the racial makeup of the public schools in the 80s and what is it now, and how many private academies got started and may still exist?
In Benton County, the first year that we integrated, I was not able to attend until they integrated one grade or two grades at a time. And the second year that I was there, they started Gray Academy, which was the private school where many of the whites at that time, they left and went to Gray Academy, which was right around the corner from the high school. And I remember one of my fellow teachers, her parents wanted her to go to Gray Academy. She didn't want to go. They was going to send her to South Haven to go with a niece or nephew, someone down there. She cried and cried and cried and begged. She said, I do not want to go to a private school. Her parents let her attend Ashland High School, and today she and I are good friends. But that was this, I think, the second year that we integrated that they started the Gray Academy.
But it's no longer there. They don't.
What happened was many of the whites who were in Ashland either got on the different school bus, which was illegal according to the settlement, and went to the Hickory Flats School, which was the only other school in Benton County in the southern part, which had very few blacks, maybe none. Or they went to an adjoining county like Tipper, which had a much lower black rate. One of the things that we found was that whites were more opposed to school desegregation than they were to voting, to black votes. That was something, and even today, there could be a lot of money saved if they consolidated all the schools and set up one school in the middle of the county. And it's just not going to happen because, and the blacks aren't even pushing it because it means that there would be an all black county. Well, not the population, but the whites would simply leave. At least that's what they think.
On that very point, I think I use the term desegregation rather than integration. Right. Because we did not see integration take place. I'm not sure even now we've seen integration take place, because essentially what happens when desegregation started to happen, you had blacks come to the schools, but oftentimes white parents left those schools, and in some cases, particularly in Delta, went to private academies. And now you had a short period of what you might call integration, which did not last long. And then a few years later, the schools in the 80s and 90s started to look like they looked in the 50s and 60s again. And that's all over the state. And that may be all over the country, by the way. So I'm very careful about using the word integration as opposed to desegregation, because I think Aviva is absolutely right. When it comes to the issue of desegregation in these schools, it seemed to be more opposition to that than into voting, because of the possibility for quote unquote race mixing.
If I can just tell one story about it. A lot of the students who tried to desegregate the school told us to interview this one particular white guy who was just really nice to everyone as a student, and to get a friendly white person's interview. So we did. We interviewed him. He was very friendly. And then we asked him how he felt today about school desegregation. This was, I think, it was clearly in the 90s that we interviewed him. And he said, we asked him how he felt about the consolidation. And he said, I'm opposed to it. I don't want my children going to, frankly, I don't want my kids going to school I don't want them going to school together. So I said, well, let me ask you a question. And his daughter was there, and she was like 21. And I said, suppose your daughter came home one day and said, I met this very nice guy, and he asked me to go out on a date with him. I don't know if you still have dates these days, but anyway. And he's black. Is that okay? And he said, I said, what would you say? He said, I'd say, pack your clothes and get out of here. Yes. And I said, well, let me ask you, why? Why do you feel that way? And he didn't even try to answer. He said, I just say, get out. He couldn't say why. So, but it's just so ingrained in so many people that, as I say, they don't want any kind of school consolidation.
Ladies and gentlemen, I know we have a few more questions in the room. We're coming up on the top of another hour, and so I want to make sure we have time for our folks to also be able to engage with you guys afterwards. We have a number of books available for purchase, again, to support the work of the Hill Country Project, as well as, if you would like to ask questions, to check out some of the kind of exhibit pieces they brought with them today. But let's give our panelists a round of applause, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you all so much for being here today. For those of you coming from North Mississippi, for Aviva and for John for making a way down from Chicago and joining us. We hope that you'll come back and join us next week. Next Saturday, we open our new exhibition, Mississippi Made. And so we'll hear from the title sponsor, actually, of that exhibit, Wayne Sanderson Farms, and their folks will be with us next Wednesday. But before we wrap up, I do want to make one more note. We've mentioned this a couple of times, but this Saturday, February 28th, there's an opportunity for you to attend a memorial reflection for Hibernia Lipsey. Thank you. In Pickens, Mississippi, at the Goodman Pickens Elementary School. Dr. Ivory Phillips will be kind of our keynote speaker for that, sponsored by the Humanities Council. We're incredibly thankful for the work of Caroline Gray Primer and that program. So if you have questions, there are a couple of flyers out on tables. But Ms. Primer, if you'll raise your hand, if people have questions, they'll come and see you. But thank you guys so much for being here today. And we will see you guys next week for History's Lunch. Thank you. They want to,